Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Corner. I am your host here, Philip, and guys, it has been a while, and for that, I apologize. It turns out I'm not the best at this whole podcasting thing. Having a YouTube channel, etc., etc. But I really do appreciate all the love and support and all the patience that you guys have given me over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, there's been a lot going on, and it's definitely been a transitional period for me. The whole month of March has basically been like a transitional period. Even though I came back down to Florida, towards the end of February, um, the whole month of March has still really continued to be more of a transitional period for myself. Um, and I am happy to say that things are slowly falling into place, and they are on track, for success, and for me to like kind of officially normalize my life down here in Florida and kind of just begin where I left off, so to speak. But because of that, unfortunately, the podcast has taken a hit, and I haven't really been able to record as much as I did in the past, and for that I apologize. um, Before we get into today's episode and what we're going to be talking about, just let you guys know, like, kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So, obviously, I made the transition from New York to Florida. And, I've been back down here in Florida for pretty much about a month now, I would say, give or take. I mean, it's kind of like pretty much the last week of March. So, you would figure about a month. Obviously there's been some ups and downs, there's been some twists and turns, but it seems like things are slowly starting to fall into place, as far as my finances and everything go. I recently just received a promotion at the retail store that I work at, so that will come with more financial security and benefits, which is great. um, I'm slowly acclimating my life, back down here in Florida. Obviously, my routines aren't perfect, and there are still some things that I'm lacking in, but overall, I would definitely say that I'm doing fairly well. Um, and like I said, I just hope that trend continues. Obviously, so that's basically kind of what's been going on. I've just been working a lot, whether it's at Pop Cult or it's been at the movies. So unfortunately, I just really haven't had a lot of free time, or in the event that I do have some free time, I just really haven't been motivated enough to record a podcast. Plus, there really hasn't been too many movies that have came out so far this year that have really caught my eye, and I'm like, yes, I need to talk about this. Um, in the next coming weeks, there are going to be a couple of films that I'm going to go over that either I have seen personally or I just haven't seen, and I'm just gathering information from the internet and kind of coming to my own conclusion. Obviously, as we get a little bit deeper into the spring, we're going to have the Minecraft movie come out. We're going to have the Sinners movie with Haley Steinfeld and Michael B. Jordan, which looks really good. And then as we get further into spring, we're eventually going to have the Thunderbolts, and then, transitioning into summer, we're going to have, the Fantastic Four, we're going to have Jurassic World Rebirth, we're going to have Superman. So there's going to be a lot of anticipated movies that are coming out. But, you know, technically, at least I would say for the rest of March, it is relatively the slow period. Plus, I do work at a more classic AMC, so there aren't a lot of crowds, and it is very quiet compared to like your traditional like dine-in theater or um, busier theater, like more up to date theater. Um, but it looks like the Minecraft movie is definitely going to be like the spark, that kind of like lights, the momentum into spring and stuff like that. Um, so I plan on doing reviews for Novocaine, which is actually what we're talking about today. Perfect segue. We are going to be going over Novocaine today because I did just see that recently. So we're going to be talking about that. I want to go over the newest addition to Disney's live action, which is Snow White. Obviously, there's been a lot of controversy around that film, so we are going to talk about that in an episode. I want to do Mickey 17 because I've heard relatively good reviews about that movie, and it from what I've seen, it seems like it's gotten pretty decent scores. And then again, that will eventually lead us into like Minecraft and just all the other projects. Obviously, there are some TV shows that I'm gonna want to talk about when they wrap up. Um, obviously, I am watching Daredevil Born Again right now. Um, so I've really been enjoying that, and I would love to kind of recap the first season of that in an episode. Um, when it officially finishes. Um, but yeah, I mean, most of the time I'm just trying to like figure out, um, what to record. So sometimes I'm like, oh well, there's nothing out, so I'm not going to record. Um, but I promise I am definitely going to try to get better. Because I love doing the podcast. This is something that definitely helps, personally, and then just seeing how many people view it, or how many people follow the channel. um it just means a lot, and especially from how this podcast started to where it is now. Like I said, it just really means a lot that I still have all this love and support, from people that subscribe, or have been watching since the days of Two Sons podcast. So thank you. So now that I've kind of gone over my whole spiel, you guys know what's going on with me. We are going to be talking about Novocaine today. So Novocaine was one of those movies that it looked like pretty funny, with the trailers and whatnot. At first, I was like, I was like, I don't know. I was like, this movie kind of looks like, Um, but then the other day I was like, well, I want to go see it, so I ended up seeing it, and to be honest, I really enjoyed it. So the film came out on March 14th of 2025. So the film has been out for about 2 weeks. So not too long. I'm sure it's still going to be in theaters for a couple more weeks, obviously, because really, besides Minecraft, I think that's kind of, there's definitely going to be room for Novocaine to kind of continue to occupy the box office and whatnot. Oh, that is something that I need to look up. I need to look up Novocaine's box office. Okay. I don't know what it's. Okay. All right, sorry. Yeah, so the film came out March 14th, 2025. So it's been out for about 2 weeks. Obviously, it has a content rating of rated R. Its genre includes action, comedy, and thriller, and it is directed by Dan Burke and Robert Olson. Um, let's see. Yeah, so it was directed by the both of them. Now we're gonna move on to the cast. So we have a few familiar faces in this movie, and then some people I just have not. I just have not seen in any projects or anything before. So obviously we have Jack Quaid as Nate. We have Amber Midthunder as Sherry. We have Ray Nicholson as Simon. We have Jacob Batalon as Roscoe. Betty Gabriel as Mincy, and then Matt Walsh as Coltrane. Obviously there are other people in the film, but really the three main people that, or I guess the main people that you need to know are the ones that I just mentioned, because they have the most screen time. So obviously people like Jack Quaid, I mean, he has been in The Boys. He was also just in a film called Companion. We also have Jacob Batalon, who also played I believe he played Ned in Tom Holland's Spider-Man's films. I think that was his name. Um, so he has had some screen time in the MCU. Um, so yeah, I mean, overall, a pretty mixed cast of either people that I just don't have any personal experience with, or some bigger actors, and actresses, to kind of draw attention to the movie. So that is the cast. So now we're gonna go over the scores. So obviously we tend to look at like three different critics when we go over these videos. We usually look at Metacritic, we look at IMDb, and then we look at Rotten Tomatoes. So IMDb gave Novocaine a 6.8 out of 10, which is a fairly good score. It's a fairly average score, good. Same with Metacritic. Metacritic gave it a 60 out of 100, which again, if you're kind of comparing this like, mathematic wise, this is definitely more of a pretty good average film. Obviously, we take a closer look at Rotten Tomatoes because we like to see, not only what the critic score is, but we also like to look at the audience score and compare the two. So according to Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter is actually at a certified fresh at 82%, which is a fairly good score. The popcorn meter is also at a fairly good score of about 85%. So overall, this film has been relatively positively received by both critics as well as the audience. So it has that action, it has the comedy aspects. Where there have been a couple times where we kind of laughed out loud in the theater. And then it does have like, that little bit of intrigue of like, it also classifies it as like a mystery and a thriller. Obviously, there's a little bit of a plot twist, that you're kind of like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that. Um, and it does have that thriller aspect because you don't exactly know what's going to happen, obviously, because the whole point is that, um, the main character, he has a rare genetic condition where he cannot feel pain. So, this whole time, this guy is just getting like beat around. So you have no idea like when he's going to collapse or like what type of injuries he has. And then like obviously towards the end of the movie, you see him wake up in a hospital because he was in like a medically induced coma because he had all these, terrifying injuries happen to him. And, obviously he didn't feel that. Um, so yeah, I mean, so Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, and IMDb have gave this movie a relatively positive scores, which is obviously what we like to see. So it is nice to know that this movie is doing fairly well according to critics and the audience. However, how is it doing in the box office? So I was trying to find a more. Here we go. That's what I wanted to look at. So according to the box office, we see that the budget for this film was about 18 million. Okay, fairly low budget for a movie like this. Wasn't really expecting huge numbers. So according to one source, it has made about $22.4 million in the box office. So it has made back its budget, and obviously a couple million to go around with it. Um, However, according to some other sources, we see that the movie has only made about $14.3 million. So, depending on, I just want to see if it. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the source where it's more in like the 22%. Um, Not 22%. 22.4 million because that just seems more correct, obviously. So we can see that this movie has obviously made back its budget and it's made a little bit more. So not only are we having consistent reviews from critics and the audience alike, but it also made back its budget and has grossed, a couple $1 million. Again, a movie like this, you don't expect to make a huge amount of money. It is a smaller film. It is just kind of one of those casual films where, what, if you're looking for something comedic and a little action packed, and something to just kind of like turn your brain off and just relax, this is the type of movie for you, basically. Um, and this movie definitely has all that and more. And to see a movie like this do considerably well, like I said, I mean, the goal of a movie is to always make back its budget, right? Because you don't want that money that you spent to go to waste. So the fact that they were able to do that, and again, the film is still out, so people are still going to see it. So it is going to continue to gross and just continue to positively make money. Overall, this film has a lot going for it. So now that we kind of went over that, we're going to jump quick into the pros and cons of the film. So we always like to start with the cons just because we like to end on a high note, right? We like to end on a good note. So again, not too many pros and cons to go over with a small movie like this, but there are a couple that stick out, and we're gonna decipher whether or not I agree or disagree with what people have been saying about the film, right? So some of the cons, some of them are a little silly. The first one is gore and violence. So obviously, if you are sensitive to gore and you are sensitive to violence, you really shouldn't watch this film because there are a couple scenes in the film that are a little gory and kind of gross. So if that really does make you squeamish, don't go see the film. However, I don't think this is a con because obviously the film is labeled as action as well as thriller. So if you're not you can't have an action film without any gore or violence. That's just not how it works. Um, so this con you could just kind of like easily write off. Like this is just something that just again, if you are sensitive to that and it's something that you just do not enjoy, um, then just don't watch the film. Another con is a weak romance. So some people found that the chemistry between the lead characters was criticized as lacking depth, which affects the emotional core of the story. So obviously, throughout the film, there is some sort of romance that they are trying to build between the main character, who's played by Jack Quaid, and the main female protagonist. They both work at a bank together. She ends up asking them out. They spend a really nice night together, but then you kind of find out throughout the whole entire film that she was doing it in order to get the code to the bank vault, because she was kind of part of this like heist team, and her job was to get close to Jack Quaid's character and get the code out of him, so then she could use it to help her friends rob the bank. Obviously, so this twist is found out in the third act. But however, when we look at a deeper level, and we look at Jack Quaid's character specifically, we find out that because of his condition and basically what he's gone through his whole entire life. Fun fact: most people with this condition, I forget what it's called, but most people with this condition, where they can't feel pain, they don't live past like 25 years old. So Jack Quaid's character in the movie is 30. So his whole entire life, he's been kind of put in a bubble. He's taken precautions. He has alarms set. He doesn't eat solid foods. Um, he's always looking over his shoulder, right, so to speak. So it's kind of hard for somebody to like understand what you're going through and just who you are as a person, when you can't really connect with them on a personal level, and you just don't really know what's going on. Um, so when he meets Sherry, which is the name of the female character in the film, he finally found somebody that he felt like he could connect with. And, despite, what she did and everything, they both genuinely felt that they had a connection in that one night. And that one night just it didn't mean anything, right? Like, there was something there. So yes, it does feel a little one-sided, and obviously Jack Quaid's character feels a lot more strongly about his feelings than the female character does, because obviously he goes on this whole adventure of rescuing her from the kidnappers, and bringing her back to safety. But in some weird but sweet way, towards the end of the film, we find out that she went to jail, obviously, for her crimes, linked to the armed robbery. However, they still maintain some sort of relationship, where they're building that connection and stuff towards the end of the film. So, but again, something like this, I mean, it's not really advertised as a romance. Again, this is more like your action comedy thriller. Um, and in a way, I mean, if you were going into this movie thinking that it was like a romance like movie, like you're just kind of kidding yourself. But I don't think it was necessarily weak. I mean, it wasn't the strongest thing, right? I mean, but again, it's kind of hard to build that romantic love story when the characters are not together for most of the movie. Like I said, they have one really nice evening together where they start building that connection, and then the whole entire movie, he's just trying to rescue her, right? And then they don't really get back together until the end of the movie. Um, so again, take this with a grain of salt, but do not go into this movie thinking that this is like a romance. The romance is more of like a subplot, right? It's kind of like what drives the main story forward. But again, it's again, throughout the film, he reiterates like meeting her and developing that connection and kind of feeling like this is like your once in a lifetime moment where you finally met somebody that understands. But again, just don't read too much into this. Finally, we have a rather, simple point, but some people thought that it had more of a simplistic plot. So obviously, while the premise is engaging, the story stakes and character motivations are considered somewhat shallow. Again, this kind of goes hand in hand with the whole weak romance. I mean, if you don't like the fact that the main character did what he did because of the connection he felt with the female character, you might not enjoy the movie as much, because you'd be like, why is he risking his life and going after this girl that he had one magical evening with, and then Obviously, towards the end of the film, when he finds out that, like, it was all kind of like a lie and she used him, he still goes through his plan and like ends up like rescuing her and like helping her out of the situation. Um, but again, you don't expect a movie like this to have a very intricate, well depth, thought out plot, right? Again, this is very simple, very easy to follow, so you can enjoy like the action, the comedy, and the thrills. So again, all these points are very nitpicky. These are very like critic driven points. So again, I would take all this with a grain of salt. Um, I think the simple plot works well for the movie because again, you're supposed to just enjoy more of the comedic relief and the action and stuff like that. So having a simple plot to follow where it's not too complicated and you can focus on the movie definitely works out for this film. The weak romance, again, the romance is more of a subplot, so don't really read too much into that. And it is an action movie, so if you cannot stand gore and violence, just don't see it. So a lot of these cons could be kind of like thrown right out the window. Um, so obviously we're getting to some of the pros now. So obviously one of the pros is that it's a very unique concept, right? So the protagonist's ability to not feel pain adds an intriguing twist to the action comedy genre. So, again, there hasn't really been a lot of films where there's been like an action comedy where, the main protagonist cannot feel pain. So it definitely does make for an interesting story when you're seeing this like just run of the mill assistant bank manager that plays video games, go out and try to be a hero, especially when he can't feel pain. It makes the action sequences a little bit more interesting because you see all this stuff being done to him and he's not feeling a thing. So it does make for a little bit more interesting concept, especially when you get to those action scenes. This literally couples on with the next point, which is, again, creative action scenes. So the film definitely features imaginative and well executed action sequences. There's one scene in the film where he fights one of the bank robbers in like a kitchen, and he like just reaches his hand into a fryer to grab the gun and shoot the guy. Or he grabs like a scalding hot skillet off the stove and smacks a guy with it. So again, just the fact that like he's doing all these things and he can't feel the pain he's putting himself in, but then he smacks somebody like with this like boiling hot pan, and they're just like, what the fuck? Like, obviously like that hurt. But he can't feel a thing. Like he has like third degree burns like all over his hands and he can't feel a damn thing. He just put his hand in a fryer and he doesn't feel anything. There's also another scene like towards the middle of the film where he goes to another one of the bank robbers' house and he has the house like booby trapped and he's walking like all throughout the house and he gets like a crossbow like shot in his like leg and he doesn't even feel it. He gets like almost like a mace that's like hung from a string like impaled into his back and he doesn't feel that either. So it's just funny to watch him like take all these hits and like have all this stuff happen to him, and like just the fact that like this guy is still standing is like a miracle. So they are definitely very creative, and again the action scenes are very fun. They're definitely a mixture of both comedy and action, which is definitely what helps the film. Sorry. So obviously, to couple that, we also have some strong performances. So obviously, Jack Quaid's portrayal of the lead character has been praised for his enthusiasm and depth, as well as Amber May Thunder and Ray Nicholson also delivered notable performances. So Jack Quaid is definitely the star of the show. Just the way he portrays the character and the way he acts, it's definitely a good role for him. And everybody else did fairly well too. We have like Ray Nicholson kind of playing like one of the like the main mastermind behind the bank robbery and just kind of like his like sadistic, like, oh, I don't really care, like nature, this is all fun and games to me. Aber Mid Thunder, playing that typical like, oh, like damsel in distress, and then she turns out to be in league with the robbers, but then obviously she feels really bad, and then she kind of, builds upon her own moral dilemma, and she's like, no, this is not right, and then she kind of ends up turning good at the end, and then she continues her relationship with Jack Quaid's character and stuff like that. Obviously the guy from Spider-Man, the Tom Holland movies, I mean, he plays a really funny side character. So there are a lot of good performances in this movie, which definitely help create those those creative action scenes, the whole unique concept and everything. And that kind of couples with our final point, where it's like there's a lot of humor and drama. So obviously, the movie balances slapstick humor with poignant moments, making them both entertaining and emotionally engaging. So, again, there is a good mixture of action and comedy. And I think, the cast and crew behind it, plus just the storytelling and like how it progresses, is all done phenomenally, especially like in the action sequences where, again, this guy is just a bank teller, so he doesn't exactly know how to like fight, so like watching him like just like kind of like do something and be like, oh, I apologize, oh, I'm sorry, like, and continue the fight is really funny. And overall, it made for a great film. So, I mean, obviously, kind of closing this episode out and going into like, my own personal, view of it. If I had to give this movie a rating, I'm probably giving it a solid 9 out of 10, to be honest. Um, there really wasn't that much that I found wrong with this film. However, it also is not perfect. So I'm not going to give it a solid 10 out of 10, but I really enjoyed this film. I mean, again, for what it is, an action comedy thriller, something that you could just kind of casually go to the movies, you grab some snacks and drinks, you just turn your brain off, and then you just relax and you enjoy this film. Having it be presented as such, it made for a great film. I had a lot of fun. I definitely laughed a lot, throughout the entire film, and it definitely was a good movie. So I would give it personally a solid 9 out of 10. Um, I highly recommend going to see this film. Obviously, you know me. If you want to save some money, go see it on a Tuesday where the tickets are discounted. But I do think you'll be getting your money's worth if you see this at full price. So definitely go check it out at your local theater. And yeah, I would love to know what you guys think about it. Obviously, my opinion, so I would love to hear yours. Um, but that is going to do it today for this episode, guys. So thank you so much for coming out to another episode of the Nerd Corner, where we discussed Novocaine and the pros and cons and what I thought about it. So like I said, in the future, I definitely am going to try to get a little better with podcasting and recording and doing the best I can to put out videos for you guys. So if you have any suggestions, any tips and tricks to help me, it would be greatly appreciated. But if you're wondering where you can find this lovely podcast and throw me your support, I am on Instagram and TikTok at The Nerd Corner, as well as YouTube at The Nerd Corner, where all the podcast episodes are posted. So obviously I will post usually a picture or some sort of clip from the film or the TV show that I am talking about, and letting you guys know that, oh, hey, this has been released and you guys should go watch it. So definitely follow me on those socials as well as YouTube, because that is where the main bread and butter of this channel is. I mean, I would love to eventually branch out into like Spotify or some sort of other podcasting platform, but YouTube is what I know. It's what I'm comfortable with. So, that is what I prefer to do it on. So yeah, so like I said, give me a follow on those. Stay up to date on this podcast and all of the releases. And yeah, until I see you guys again in the next one, I hope you guys have a great day, great afternoon, great evening. Please be safe. Do not do anything stupid. Spring is finally upon us. So grow your gardens. Grow yourself, grow yourself, get into that mindset, do that spring cleaning, figure out, how you want to blossom and nurture yourself. And I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.